Welcome. This is Dr. Kurt Johnson of the Light on Light Press. Thank you for joining us for this journey through Light on Light books, illuminating the message of peace. In it, we'll be sharing a moment with each Light on Light author, simply bridged by banners and animations, sharing their books' titles and covers. So let's go over right now to our first author. Sit back and enjoy this colorful sequence of Light on Light authors and their messages. Okay, I'm here with Emmanuel Kunzelman, co-editor of Light on Light's book, The Holo Movement, Embracing Our Collective Purpose to Unite Humanity, generally also known as the Holo Movement book. So Emmanuel, tell us, what were the transformational goals that you visioned for the Holo Movement book? And how do you see those already coming to fruition in the emerging Holo Movement?
Well, thank you, Kurt. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Holo Movement book. And the transformational goals were about as big and broad as one can imagine. So we shot for the sky and the outer limits here. The main idea is that the Holo Movement is a term coined by physicist David Bohm to describe the undivided wholeness of reality and how there's a flow between the implicate order, the divine coding of the universe, and the explicate order, our manifest reality. And Bohm described how this reality comes out of the infinite potential of the quantum field, but yet it is still all one. And we feel like this concept works really well as a sociological branding for a movement of movements of all the emerging organizations and efforts to create solutions to the many problems that our society faces. So the proposal behind the book was to explain Bohm's theory and to use that as an outline itself for the book, and then to get as many contributing authors as we could who were experts in the given section of the Holo Movement development to express their opinions. And we felt like this anthology of authors represented the essence of the Holo Movement itself, and would hopefully carry the message much more strongly. And deeply grateful to the more than 50 authors that contributed in many ways to the Holo Movement book. It was really the Holo Movement in action itself, and with deepest gratitude to Light on Light Press, to you, Kurt, to Bob Atkinson, to Sacred Stories, everyone who provided so much guidance, support, and wisdom in developing the Holo Movement book. We surely couldn't have done this without you, and deeply grateful for your efforts in producing the book and helping us to bring the authors together, to give it coherence, to give it the flow of the grand wave of the Holo Movement itself. The book is basically broken down into two parts. The first one there's an introduction, a brilliant introduction by Will Keepin, explaining the significance of the Holo Movement, particularly in light of the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize, which was given to 3 physicists who validated the theory of interconnectivity or non-locality. And this is a prerequisite for Bohm's theory of quantum physics to work. And so ever since the 1950s, when Bohm first presented his theory of quantum physics, this has been in the field of study of quantum physics. No one could disprove it mathematically, but one of the hang-ups for many physicists was that it required this idea of non-locality, that is entanglement. You take two particles, you put them together, they get shared properties, you separate them by light years, and when you change the property of one, the entangled partner particle will change exactly instantaneously in that moment with no time for communication across space and time. So this really is an idea that the universe is an instantaneous, all-pervasive connected web of information beyond space-time reality. So that's a lot to swallow, and for many physicists, perhaps too much, except that now in 2022, 3 physicists have been awarded the Nobel Prize for definitively proving that non-locality is in fact part of our universe, therefore validating Bohm. So it was a great year to launch this book, and Will Keepan, physicist himself, a brilliant philosopher and thinker, writes the introduction to the book explaining this. Then we take it on. There's a part on the implicate order, the attributes of the implicate order. What would divine essence itself look like to code and give the information to a holo movement? And then part 2 is the attributes of the explicate order, how reality manifests that inner purpose of the universe. There is an interval in the middle section by Ken Wilber, him posing some questions about the holo movement, explanation about integral theory itself, and then we take that second part on the explicate order to try and respond to Ken's questions. So there is a natural flow to the book, and we hope that it gives an explanation of the sociological branding of the holo movement, the meaning and purpose of the holo movement, and first and foremost and finally, inspiring people to take action. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of philosophy, but we know that our world is in crisis, that there are challenges everywhere, and we need to respond to those issues now, immediately, whether it's climate change or many of the other problems we have. As a human society, we can come together. We have the intelligence and the understanding to do this. We just need to work together, unify our efforts, become as one like the holo movement itself, and move forward. So the grand call of the book really is to understand this, to inspire us, and create a foundation both scientifically and spiritually for every individual working then in a collective, what we would call holon, working together in these small communities to alleviate some of the problems we face today. So that's the transformative action of the book itself and the outcome we had hoped for. Couldn't be more pleased with all the support from you, as I mentioned before, and Light on Light Press. The reception the book has gotten so far, and it really gives us a standard bearer for the basis of the holo movement itself. As we're talking to people, we can always reference the book and say, if you want to understand more details from 50 different brilliant, experienced authors with their voices on the holo movement, read the book. So that was our intention. We're working on the outcome, but so far so good. We're really, really pleased with everything, and hope you will all read the book and take action yourselves and find your flow in the holo movement. It's hold us in motion. It's taking us into an ever brighter future.
Yeah, Emmanuel, thank you so much. And really, it's so appropriate that you'd be opening the discussion of all of these books in that context of the holo movement and of wholeness. And I want to direct everyone's attention also during Peace Week, of which this program is a part, to our Voice America special for Peace Week, in which Emmanuel also talks then about the unfolding of the holo movement and everything that has been happening since the Igniting the Holo Movement event in Sedona in March. So Manuel, again, thank you. What a perfect context for us to talk about all the other books that have come out of Light on Light this year and last year.
Thank you, Kurt. It's my pleasure. And thank you again for everything you do at Light on Light. You're really casting that light on the world. So, deepest gratitude.
So I'm here with Dr. Paul J. Mills, author of Light on Light's 2022 book, Science, Being, and Becoming, The Spiritual Lives of Scientists, with a foreword by Deepak Chopra, contributions from over 30 neuroscientists and medical professionals, and a special commentary by Ken Wilber. And we were thrilled when this book won a well-deserved Gold Nautilus-award. So, Paul, can you tell us what was your transformative goal in writing the book, and how have you seen that goal furthered and fulfilled with the success of the book?
Thank you, Kurt. Be happy to speak about that. Really, my primary goal with the book was to help eliminate, or some people speak about healing, this divide between science and spirituality. For me, of course, it's a very unfortunate divide. I look at it more as a kind of historical artifact, how this divide got started about 4 centuries ago. But the main point is that this divide does exist. For many, many people, certainly within the materialistic sciences, it exists. And from my point of view and others, it's had many adverse influences on multiple dimensions of our societies. Certainly for how we look at the world around us, our sense of separation from the natural world and beyond. But it's also had many unfortunate effects for people in terms of how they look at their own transpersonal and metaphysical experiences. For many people, science really is the arbiter of truth, as you know. And what science says, then people say, okay, well, that's the way it is. And science for so long has said the spirit, we could say the spiritual world, does not exist. And many people have gone along with that based on what science says, because science is here to tell us about what is unknown. And in this case, it's not been good, because science has been denying something it hasn't even really gotten into studying over the centuries and doing research. It's been just a closed-mindedness. And this attitude has certainly influenced medicine itself. In medicine, people are looked at more like a body, like a machine, like something with a collection of symptoms, and not anything beyond that as far as really a spiritual being here on the earth, living life. And this aspect of denial, too, has led for people to deny their own metaphysical and spiritual experiences, because the science has said it doesn't exist, really. And I write about this in my book. There are quite a number of stories I've included where some of the scientists themselves had encountered that in their own lives, whether it was within their very own self or with parents or other people around them. The idea with the book then was to interview scientists about their own metaphysical and spiritual experiences, with the idea that scientists, of course, are people who have trained deeply in the materialism of science. For many, that was their worldview. And then to have people like this who have been deep in science come along and say, well, actually, I've had these experiences which initially I didn't understand. But as I've delved more into them, they've opened up my worldview so much. And this has been very powerful as far as the messaging of the book, because it's been encouraging for not only scientists, but just many people who have looked to science and believed in this divide. So the message has been, actually, this rift between science and spirituality has not been good for us, that we need to loosen it up and eliminate it. I mean, think about how many resources science has that it could be devoting to helping us as human beings really understand our true nature beyond the 5 senses, our deep inner spiritual nature that for many people is really the source of meaning and purpose in life. So that was the goal of the book. I think it's been going well, just on feedback, for example, that I've gotten, as I mentioned, from other scientists, but also citizen scientists and non-scientists alike, just encouraging me to continue this work and the message of the book, because it's time that we just resurrect science and help it fulfill, which I think was one of its initial goals, which was to help us understand the nature of the universe, the living universe itself, and how that works and its conscious relationship to us.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. I mean, what an overview of what people have to look forward to in reading Science, Being, and Becoming. So, Paul, then tell us what is next in your plans, not only for the message of this book, but also your ongoing work on this important transformational theme.
Well, a main focus area for me lately is a podcast that I'm doing with Dr. Julie Kroll. The title of the podcast is Main Street Mystics. And we've been bringing together mystics, people who really have a deep spiritual life already, and we're pairing them with scientists. And we're doing these interviews on a variety of topics relevant to really the spiritual life of us as individuals, but also of the natural world, of how we interact with the natural world. You know, animals, we did one on meditation and so forth. This has been, I think, really well received and has also helped further the messaging of the book, because we're grounding a lot of the message of the book in practical terms through these interviews. Let's see, the next book, is that what you're asking about too?
Why not?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. Before I got into neuroscience, I trained in biology and ornithology. And I'm mentioning that because I've always had a deep love and appreciation of the natural world, of the earth herself, and all of its inhabitants, plants, animals, and so forth. And what has me interested in lately that I've been doing meditation on and reading about is understanding how our human spiritual evolution is related to the spiritual evolution of the earth herself and the earth's inhabitants, and particularly within the kingdoms of nature. And I'm happy to get into that deeper if you'd like, because there's many dimensions of that, of course. But that's what interests me, because I'm interested in this idea of we're trying to liberate science, and then what lies ahead for us with the liberated science as far as our knowledge and our experience and our ability to tap into experience. And how does that relate to human spiritual development? And that's a primary interest I have, is where is humanity going? But I just have this feeling, and that has led to an interest that our continued spiritual evolution is deeply dependent on what we can call the spiritual evolution of many of nature's kingdoms. And I'm not only speaking about the biological side of things, but really the side of nature herself, which is often spoken about as nature spirits of the David kingdom. And that's what I've been focusing on currently.
So I'm here with Dr. Elena Mustakova. Elena, thanks so much for joining this special program with Light on Light authors. Now, Elena, in 2021, you published with us Global Unitive Healing, Integral Skills for Personal and Collective Transformation, with a foreword by Ken Wilber and an afterword by Claudia Wells, the chair at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And we were so thrilled that it won a Silver Nautilus-award. So, Elena, can you tell us about the book and what was your transformative goal in writing it, and how you've seen that goal furthered and fulfilled with the success that the book has had?
Thank you, Kurt. It's always been an absolute joy and pleasure to work with you. And I'm very happy we can talk about this book that we helped bring into the world together. My book was really a response to the deepest affliction of our age, which I believe is our divisiveness, which results from centuries of domination as a model for human relations. So this domination paradigm is at the root of the economic, political, social, and environmental policies that have literally brought humanity to the brink of disaster. And it is still paralyzing decision-making at the highest levels, the same divisive dominant paradigm, even as the clock is ticking on a heating planet, and wars and authoritarian regimes are further exacerbating the threat to humanity. So to counteract these deep-rooted patterns, we need to engage in processes of unitive healing. And frankly, when the book came out, this was a term that really didn't exist, unitive healing. It has been out in circulation since you and I worked on this book together. And what that means is that we actually need to develop processes of healing on individual level, community level, national level, and global healing in such ways that it leads to a more united world. So that's what really my book is about. And it starts with looking inward and reawakening to who we really are, because we're so conditioned by these political and social identities and identifications that are really pushed on us, ideological identifications as well, that in a way, as well as by corporate materialism and this numbing consumerism, that we've really forgotten in so many ways who we really are. So beginning by connecting to our inner nature, to that space within, whether we call it soul or our inner reality, it's a space beyond words, it's a space beyond names, but it's a space from which our deepest capacities and commitments arise. So healing always begins with connecting to that place, and then really understanding how we, in fact, choose the states of our own minds and hearts, and we have authorship over that. So the goal is really to motivate each person to step on this path and to take ownership of our innate capacity for compassion for human suffering and our burning desire for justice, which is universal to all of us, and also our capacity for discernment. These are things we have forgotten we have, and these are our deepest resources. So the book shows through many life vignettes how people awaken to these deep capacities within, heal old and dysfunctional narratives, and move into becoming agents of change. And as I continue to work on the ground since then, one of the things that is becoming even clearer to me is that the majority of people around the world, I'm now in Europe and working mostly with Eastern Europe, but also throughout the world, continue to work globally. And most people really do want to make positive change in the world. But they feel that in order to make difference at scale, they have neither the money nor the influence nor the connections to do so. And so there is really a paralysis. So what we don't understand, and what I really tried to make clear with this book and continuing to work on that now, is that the state of things is really a consequence and an expression of our mindsets. And that change begins there with our psychological and our cultural beliefs. And so we understand the need to address problems and injustices, but we don't necessarily understand the need to embrace universal values, universal human values such as dignity, equity, compassion. Those are seen as idealism and dismissed as idealism very often. And also there's another reason why people are hesitant to embrace these universal values. They have been so abused by common rhetoric of various ideological systems that surround us. I have firsthand experience with how communist totalitarianism abused these ideas, but I see the same thing going on with different ideologies the world around, including in the Western world. And so it's really hard for people to open their hearts to these ideas and realize that they are not idealism, they are actually realism. It's the only path forward. And that's what the book tries to show. First, on the individual level, then there are stories of community healing. They're stories of using language to heal. And then the last two chapters focus on the healing of a nation, in this case, the United States, which is a deeply afflicted nation and has become even more so since the book came out. And the last chapter looks at healing processes worldwide. So it's quite a journey. And unitive healing, and since then I've been working on unitive healing and unitive justice, are processes that are absolutely critical and very little understood yet. So I'm very grateful to you for helping this book come out into the world.
Yeah, so Elena, it's just great to hear that summary, and it's so in sync with all of the other discussions by the Light on Light authors in this program. And I know that you've been continuing with a lot of activity globally, and some of that's going to be landing in the same Peace Week season as this program. So tell us about that and what you're going to be doing with the future of the message of your book.
Yes, thank you. We actually just recorded a Voice America special for Peace Week season with Dr. Nina Meyerhoff, who is the author of the One Humanity Institute at Auschwitz. And today we had the joy to explore how much we have this shared vision for humanity and for youth, and how comparable our challenges are as we're working in the former Eastern Europe, trying to introduce a vision and an understanding that's global, but that is particularly less understood in this part of the world. So that's one major endeavor. My work continues, and in Bulgaria, in Europe, with the World Upshift movement, which is all about, and I am on the advisory board of the European branch, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. And the concept of the cultural upshift to maturity is what I'm really focusing on. What does that mean? The maturity that we need now is so different than what we used to consider mature adulthood, which is rather helpless now in the face of what we're living. And so I am working with young people, with the media. I'm working with various organizations, both in Bulgaria and in Europe and worldwide, to translate processes of unitive healing and unitive justice into a better understanding of the kind of maturity that we absolutely need to upshift to now to address the crises of our world.
Yeah, Elena, thank you so much. And thanks for mentioning Upshift, because that book, also from Light on Light, will be being released on October 24th, which is the Global Oneness Summit and Global Oneness Day. And there's also going to be a special program on the Great Upshift book and the Upshift movement as a part of the Peace Week as well. So Elena, thank you so much for joining us and telling us all about this important work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Kurt. It's always a delight to be talking with you, to be working with you. I'm most grateful for the wonderful work you are doing for all of us in humanity. Thank you.
So I'm here with Dr. Robert Atkinson, author of Light on Light's 2023 Silver Nautilus award-winning book, A New Story of Wholeness, an experiential guide for connecting the human family, with the foreword by Jean Houston and afterward by Deepak Chopra. So Bob, can you tell us about A New Story of Wholeness, especially in the context of your other Nautilus award-winning book, The Story of Our Time, and the general message of your life's work? What was your transformative goal in writing the new book, and how have you seen that goal furthered and fulfilled with the success of the book?
Sure. Thanks, Kurt. These two books really are interconnected. In 2017, I wrote The Story of Our Time to provide an evolutionary context to the story of our collective transformation that is currently unfolding. And that one really inspires hope by tracing love's unifying power throughout history and as it's expressing itself in our midst today. That book provides a big picture perspective of human progress, pointing toward a peaceful unity as our ultimate destination. So that's about our collective story of transformation happening now. And because we're clearly at a critical juncture in human history, I realized that we needed markers and signposts to guide our way personally and individually through this process as well. And that's what Jean Houston addressed in her foreword to A New Story of Wholeness. She wrote, "We need new ways of relating to each other and serving humanity. We know instinctively when a new story is needed, when the old stories no longer speak to the current reality. What we need is for stories to be remythologized and rewoven in the light of today's necessities." So that's exactly what this book does. It identifies the motifs and archetypes we're born with, latent in our unconscious, that emerge as we live out experiences of life and that are guiding us individually and collectively through a periodic process of transformation. This is what helps us discover a new story of our wholeness. So after a lifetime of working in folklore and mythology and comparative religion and psychology, and developing a protocol for personal myth making, soul making, and life storytelling, I've come to recognize a universal pattern shared by these ways of knowing that transforms our lives and keeps humanity on its evolutionary path. It's a pattern embedded within our unconscious that guides our evolving consciousness, keeps our focus on the wholeness of all things, and brings many separate paths of wholeness back together as one. So this is a unitive pattern we are born with that connects us all as part of the human family. And that means that a new story of wholeness is about our personal story of transformation that's needed now to help fuel our collective story of transformation. They interconnect in that way. One's focused on the collective and the other is focused on the individual, the personal. And a brief summary of the latest might look something like this. A new story of wholeness is emerging from within us, aligning our endeavors with the wholeness and motion around us. Our deep story connects us to our own wholeness, to the entire human family, and to the greater wholeness of the universe. So as far as the transformative goal in writing the book, that's also pretty much summed up in the prologue that I wrote, which says, the purpose of this book is to provide the means for telling the story of our innate wholeness, which will lead us to a unitive consciousness. This creative process of exploring and expressing our own experience of wholeness gives us all a deeper commitment to ensuring Earth's well-being as a living organism, reveals to us the necessity of collaborative relationships and dynamic co-evolutionary partnerships on a planetary scale, and confirms for us that our personal and collective evolution of consciousness depends upon the stories we share with each other. So, an overview of the book. The first part explains the three principles that heal the illusion of separation. And the first principle is the evolution principle, which says evolution is directional toward ever wider circles of unity. Briefly, the second principle is the consciousness principle, which says consciousness is an innate potentiality unfolding toward right relationships on all levels. Yet with this one, consciousness is dependent upon the initiative we take to actively investigate reality. And third, the wholeness principle says that reality is one and all of creation is a whole. So when we put these three principles together and we can merge them actually into a meta principle that underlies them all, and that is consciousness evolves toward wholeness. And that's really what both books are about.
Yeah, and
Uh,
Bob, congratulations. And obviously, the public got the message, and book people got the message, because you certainly have gotten the accolades from the Nautilus folk with regard to that message. And also, thank you, for so much of what you've brought to Light on Light and our whole process here. That's involved all the books that we're really talking about on this program. So Bob, looking ahead, what do you see as the future now for your work and your books with this amazing message?
Well, I think it's really, one thing that's really important, I think, is that more people become aware of and proactive in the art of what I like to call conscious storytelling. And just like the world needs conscious business and also to understand conscious evolution, we need to become more familiar with conscious storytelling, especially because, especially narratives that bring about unity. And these are what we call unitive narratives. As we become conscious of the wondrous wholeness all around us, we naturally want to share this with others. And so I'm getting this message out through my workshops, through blogs, through interviews and the like. And the workshops on living in wholeness really are transformative. It's amazing how much people can realize about their own life experiences when they go to this deeper archetypal level of putting their life together as a whole and seeing it as a lifetime of transformative experiences that have led them to where they are. So those are some of the ways I'm getting it out there.
Yeah, so Bob, so thanks so much. And again, well-deserved congratulations. Okay, so I'm here with Rajashree Ma, author of Light on Light's 2023 book, May the Love Force Be With You, Kali Ki Reiki, Healing Through Divine Mother and Yogic Wisdom, with the foreword by Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati. So Rajashree Ma, can you tell us, what was your transformative goal in writing the book, and how have you seen that goal furthered and fulfilled with the success of the book?
Oh, thank you for the question, Kurt. First of all, I guess there really were two goals, and those two goals kind of weave together. And one is that I really want people to see the presence of the sacred feminine in the world today. And some of how we're seeing her in the world today, right, is she's giving us a lot of wake-up calls through floods and earthquakes and fires. And, she's saying, children, you have not been listening. And so part of the message is it's time to listen. But it's not that we listen, right, with our outer ears. It's not even about seeing with our outer eyes. Right, it's listening to her within, listening in our own heart to the messages of, yes, how we need to be in the world, but also how we need to be with one another. And then along with that, and this is the second goal that weaves together, and of course she is the great weaver, is for as much as possible for people to understand that healing, and yes, I teach a form of energy healing, Kali Ki Reiki healing, right? But that healing is an opportunity for wholeness, and it's an opportunity for harmony within our own physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual systems, and harmony with one another and in the world. And Kurt, that energy healing, I guess part of it is like I want people to take energy healing seriously, to understand that it fits in with our new holographic understanding that comes from science, right? The as above, so below, everything is reflected in everything else. The Sanskrit word sarva sarvatma katva, which means everything is within everything else. And to understand that energy healing is about healing all of us, because we are only energy. We're energy vibrating at different frequencies. And what energy healing can do is it can actually adjust those frequencies within us and get them running in better alignment within us, but also can attune or entrain our energy system with the energies of others and our planet. That to me is wholeness. That is healing.
No, that's great to hear, because we're also going to be talking with Dr. Robert Atkinson about his book, A New Story of Wholeness. So isn't it interesting how all of these threads run together? And we were talking just before we got on about, the things that are ahead in your work, because it's so important that an entire new lineage in Reiki healing has evolved out of the wellspring of the divine feminine specifically. And that's just really, so important. So leads to then the next thing we want to ask you about is, what's next then, as you see it, with your work and the message of your book?
Yeah, thank you. What I really want is for people to experience this. I want people to be able to look within and to experience what it means to come into alignment. How do we do that? I mean, I would love everyone to experience a Reiki healing, and that actually can be done at distance. And I'd like everyone to experience the energy, which is, this is the energy that's known by so many different words. I call it the love force. It's the life force energy. It's Holy Spirit. It's, it's just beingness. And I want people to know this and understand this for their wisening, for their awakening, right? And so, for people to kind of maybe step out of their comfort zones and do a little experiencing. But of course, you can't experience it unless you're open to it, right? If you're open to changing your paradigms and seeing the world as energy, not just mentally knowing it, but feeling it. So I want to do this through any means possible, really, Kurt, because anything is an opportunity to feel into the depths of being.
So I'm here with Dr. Lena Banerjee Brown, author of Light on Light's 2021 book, True Light, Ordinary People on the Extraordinary Spiritual Path of Sukyo Mahakari, with the foreword by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. So Lena, can you tell us, what was your transformative goal in writing the book, and how have you seen that goal furthered and fulfilled with the success of the book?
Thank you so much, Kurt. It's been, first of all, a joy to publish the book with you and to share its message. Essentially, that spiritual action is a practical, concrete action on the highest, most unified plane to address the crises of our times by purifying and elevating the vibrations and condition of our deep conscious, and the condition of the physical and natural world. It has been my intention to share such awareness through my book and the transformative path of true light, or light, which I found. So readers, listeners, if they like, can go to True Light or Sukyo Mahikari centers throughout the world to make their own connections and have their own awakenings. I've also wanted and intended the book to be a companion for anyone who is inspired to give light, or anyone already doing so. A companion who shows what giving and receiving light can look like when it's integrated in one's life, and one that instills passion for continual elevation of consciousness to live an altruistic, spiritually awakened life for the generations to come. And as for results, I've heard from a few places, USA, Canada, UK, Australia, India, that the book is a very good read and that it emanates vibrations of kindness. I've heard of a person who has read the book and showed up at a Sukyo Mahikari Center to receive light. Someone who liked the book introduced me to someone else who interviewed me on television and YouTube, and then recently showed up at the United Nations to hear a talk on the art of true light, climate change, climate action was the title, I believe, through the art of true light and purifying consciousness. And she received light afterwards and was very happy, and that was a very meaningful circle of events. I've heard from people who have been giving light for a long time that they've been able to share the book. They've enjoyed sharing the book with family and friends because it has helped them to share what our spiritual practice is all about and what they do when they go to their centers. So it's been a bridge builder for some among family and friends. And 3 groups of light givers in 3 different cities in the United States started book clubs with the book. And that has been an experience that has increased their sense of community, they have said, and also their joy of service. And one of the groups planted a Yoko garden, which is an organic garden grown with light to regain the attitude of human nature harmony. So those are some of the fulfillments of publishing the book with you. Besides, the memory of the beautiful process of publishing the book with your whole team, and the visual result, which really makes me smile every time I look at the book. So thank you so much.
No, absolutely. And it's great to hear that report of the effect that this amazing book has had on people. So Lena, tell us what is next in your plans with regard to your work and the message of the book.
Thank you. It's essentially the work of integrating the spiritual and the material. For example, light and psychology, light and governance, any field really. With respect to light and psychology, one project that began when the book launched is materializing now. It's a spirit-centeredness course series for mental health professionals, through which we look forward to introducing the book to our colleagues, as well as the practice of light and the positive impacts on personal and collective health and well-being. Spirit-centeredness is a term that represents this integration of the spiritual and material. It means self-awareness of spirit, mind, and body, guided by thoughts, words, that guides thoughts, words, and actions. So I'll say it one more time. That spirit-centeredness represents the integration of the spiritual and material. And it means self-awareness of spirit, mind, and body that guides thoughts, words, and actions. The 3 courses are titled Spirit-Centeredness in Psychology, a spirit-centered self-reflective exercise, and developing balance through spirit-centered gardening. So besides that, we have a small group called Circles, which meets monthly. It's a group of colleagues and a Sukyo Mahikari instructor. And we get together to develop and to practice spirit-centeredness exercises. We do it in the form of light and reflection circles, which is we give and receive light and then we do reflection. Or we do reflection circles in which we simply do reflection. So we look forward to sharing this work of cultivating spirit-centeredness and spiritual philanthropy as opportunities to do so come to us organically. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm here with Steve Farrell, author of Light on Light's 2023 book, A New Universal Dream, My Journey from Silicon Valley to a Life in Service to Humanity, with a foreword by New York Times bestselling author Neale Donald Walsch. So, Steve, can you tell us what was your transformative goal in writing the book, and how have you seen that goal furthered and fulfilled by the success of the book?
The premise of the book is that there's a universal consciousness that animates all of life, and it's really, which is to say then that the universe or cosmos is a superorganism, and we can use terms that my scientist friends use, cosmos and universe, but I like to use spiritual terms, divine, even God's presence. And I like to use those terms because when we look at what this universal consciousness is, it is pure love. It is healing. It is light. It is all of these extraordinary things. And when we live into it, if we choose to, and extend it, then it is miracle power, it's omniscience, it's omnipotence. All of these, the universe actually is at our back. We're like a faucet on the ocean where the universe is saying, this part of myself is creating healing for the whole of humanity. And that faucet is turned all the way on. And yes, even miracles are become a part of our daily life when we live into this. By the way, we could also call it, I'm saying this is the key premise, but we could also call it the key promise. There are two premise or promises that follow this. The second one is that we're actually designed then as part of this universal consciousness. That would make sense, wouldn't it, if there is a universal consciousness that is animating all of life, that we're designed to be part of it. And then the third is that the more we give ourselves away, which is to say, and be in service to the whole, the better we feel. So, and these things follow one after the other after the other. And now the interesting thing here is of course, my co-founder, Neale Donald Walsch, Conversations with God, shares all of this, but mystical traditions that share this. This goes back to 2050 BCE, goes way, way back. And scientists are now affirming all of the things that I'm sharing. Of course, things like love and healing and health and well-being. Actually, health and well-being, they do bring in. Love and healing, not so much, though the scientists do say that it is a non-dual universe. It's a universe that's in harmony, which is now going against a lot of the things that we were taught growing up, this dual universe that exists. And scientists are saying, no, that's not the case.
Yeah, so Steve, this is so exciting. So tell us now what's next, because between your book and Humanity's Team and Humanity's Stream and Changing the Future of Humanity and all of your initiatives. So what is next with you, with your message and the message of your book?
So what's next for us is really education. So there are three things that we recommend to people that are wanting to live into this. One is that they educate themselves and really understand this whole conscious universe and how they can live into it. The second one is embodying and expressing this new awareness. It's one thing to have an awareness of a conscious universe. The awareness only is like looking at a beautiful meal on a table and not eating it. And the opportunity is to eat it, which is to say to embody it and express it. And that's where the beauty and the real joy comes in. And then the third one, which naturally follows, is engagement, inviting other people to live into it. This is, as you know, Kurt, we're sharing, this is our Galileo moment now. Galileo moment because in the early 1600s, Galileo was the man that stood up with his telescope and said, gosh, this geocentric universe where we believe the whole universe revolves around the Earth is not so. That we actually revolve around a sun, and we're in a solar system, and we're at the edge of the universe. He had to recant to save his life. He was under house arrest all of his life. Would have been killed if he hadn't recanted, but it was too late. Others had telescopes and observed the same thing. The world changed as a result of his research. I say Galileo moment because what we're talking about here now is this universal consciousness animating all of life. We live inside of a super organism, that we're a cell in the body of life. We want to be in service to it. That's what makes us happy. That's an entirely different understanding of life, and actually the science that most of us grew up with, which was more of a physical body science. Now we're saying it's a spiritual universe, which means it's a vibrational universe, which means that we're creating daily practices that set our own vibrational place each day. And that allows us to be happy and joyful and to live an incredible life. Where we live into that, and where we experience that, what I describe it as is it's like living on a raft up above the daily roller coaster life. That's good day, bad day, the challenges that we all remember growing up with. We still have challenges, by the way. It's just that we feel so much better. We can stay in joy even as we confront challenges, because we understand that we're a part of everlasting life. That's one of the features of this universal consciousness, or of the divine, of having everlasting life. There are many other features too, unlimited potential and things. So we actually want to engage others. We want to invite others to live this way. And when we do this, when we live this way together, we create a tipping point, and we create which is to say, a whole new way of living on the planet. And that's what is necessary now. There's an importance and an urgency now, which is why we call it the Galileo moment, where we all become a Galileo. We do it together. It's no longer all on one person's shoulders. It's on all of our shoulders to talk about this new science and the repercussions of the new science that speaks to how we can live our lives with a whole lot more health and well-being and joy and laughter, and even as we're living in a time when there's so much importance and urgency to shift the way that we live on the earth, so that we address things like global warming and extreme weather and war and all of these other things, which are these huge challenges out in today's world.
Yeah, Steve, so thank you so much for joining us. And to say, all of the other 7 authors from Light on Light that you've all just heard, we're going to be right there with you, Steve, on this message. And this is what this message for Peace Week with this video series is all about, from Light on Light authors. So thanks to you, and thanks also to our audience for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Kurt. I really appreciate it.